Right, good afternoon from a very rainy, windy, pretty grey, but a different place other than Peterborough. And right in front of me, the man himself.
How are we doing?
Very well, thank you, Mark. So basically, we've had a little chat and Mark is going to walk me around everything. You may have seen this before. Hopefully Mark can throw in some different stuff and jazz it up a little bit. So take it away, Mark.
Okay. So this is the rainwater harvesting system. So it's sustainable water features. We're all about essentially working with nature and sustainability. So underneath here, it's like your rainwater harvesting system, but it's on a much bigger scale. And you can scale these up to any size you want. You know, if you think about farm buildings and you know, car parks, you could have something that's huge. Essentially there's 25 aqua blocks. I'll show you what an aqua block is in a second if you don't know what an aqua block is, but essentially it's like a crate that fills a void, so you can have 2.5 times more water in the basin rather than digging a hole, filling it full of aggregate. If you fill it full of aggregate, you've only got 35% space in between the aggregate and the stones for the water. And that's what we used to do until aqua blocks. Now with the aqua blocks, you can have 95% water. So it's 3.5 times or 3 times, I think, 3 times more water. So the size of the hole can be 3 times smaller with the same amount of water. So essentially this is sustainable. People worry about mosquitoes with water in the garden, where if you've got moving water, then mosquitoes aren't going to be a problem because they lay their eggs. They like stagnant water conditions. So if you think about a traditional rainwater but from a greenhouse or a shed, you will get mosquito larvae growing in there because it's a stagnant area, where if you've got something in there recirculating it, even an aeration pump or something, then you won't get mosquitoes.
Perfect.
Then you come on to a sort of like a bit of a bog garden. Essentially this is where we used to keep our plants. We'd buy water plants and we would put them into this sort of like area that we've now filled it full of peat. And you can see there's a number of different mosses in there, number of different sort of like water plants, and essentially emulating another type of ecosystem. We are going to rip this out because we're going to put in another entrance into Pond College via here. And then we've got serencinas, which are carnivorous plants. So these eat wasps and flies and all sorts of stuff. They're sort of like going over a little bit now, but you can sort of see the flower heads. These are all of the old flowers. I can send you a picture or so you can see them in their sort of like full glory. But what happens is the fly or the wasp goes down inside the trumpet, and then it's, if you have a look, let me see if I can find one, then this will be full of flies. Probably better if I get a bigger, fatter one, and then you can see it. So essentially the fly goes, or the bee goes down here, and then you'll see in here there'll be loads of them. He says, there you go. So this is how the plant gets all of its sort of like nutrients. So they want an inert substrate, so that's all flies and sort of like other insects that the carnivorous plant consumes. And this one here is a Venus flytrap. Everybody's seen the Venus flytraps inside.
Of course, yeah.
So yeah, these are all hardy. What I actually did is I thought, right, I want to put some pitcher plants or you know, some serencinas next to my ponds, and I thought, well, what I'll do is I'll buy a load to see what happens in the UK and in the Northamptonshire countryside, and essentially all of them survive. So it's like any hardy serencina. I actually think that it's better conditions than in North America, where they actually come from. For the hardy ones, you can get a lot of different tropical ones and stuff. This one here is quite a nice, you can see the sort of like the coloration and stuff. It's nice, but like I say, they're going over really. Different types. You've got some evergreen ones, but yeah. Then we move on to the fish. This is just a sort of like a holding system. We've got some 1 and 2 year old koi in there. It's just really a holding system. We don't sell fish as a general rule, but if some of our customers want to buy some fish, then like any other consumer or hobbyist, then we will supply them fish. But we're not a retail, we don't sell wet goods as such. We sell a lot of dry goods, but you'll see them later on. This is a product that we sell, rippled urns, so you can have water coming down, and we've painted these up just for a bit more attention really, and you can see there's a couple more over there, just to jazz them up a little bit really. So this is spray paint.
Takes well, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it's got a varnish inside it. So originally we had the content cabin over on the concrete pad when we only had a smaller area, and we got a graffiti artist to come in. And when I said to Charlotte I'm going to get a graffiti artist to come and spray the cabin when it was just literally a cream colour, she was like, oh no, that's terrible. But she didn't realise that I was going to put loads of koi and fish and lilies on it, which looks amazing now.
Yeah, works all right.
And then it's sort of like we get them to do the urns, the Torii Gate from Japan.
Yes, yeah.
So this was
we've both seen many of those.
Yeah, we had this donated by Wayne from Olympian Water Gardens up in Manchester. You know, we did during Aquatic Art Live a couple of years ago. He said, Mark, I've got a Torii Gate for you, where would you like it? And essentially it was sort of like, it ended up here. So it's like, welcome to the Pond College Gardens, or the Water Feature Gardens at Pond College.
Yeah.
What we've got here is we've got some easy pond ponds. This one is actually sort of like my design. Originally I was going to make it into a filtration system at the back there, and I would have drilled through, but these are all actually still water wildlife now. So I like the idea of still water wildlife. This has got a lot of diatoms. So the brown is actually a type of algae. It's not actually, you know, like, well, it's, yeah, there's a number of bacteria and different algae, but we need to do some work in there. And I've been meaning to do it, but there's lots of Daphnia and all sorts in there. And then we've got a still water fish pond. These are all the babies out of the lockdown pond. We did drop an aerator in there when it was hot, but you can see it's great. And then move on to the lockdown pond where the dogfish is.
Yeah, it gets everywhere.
Yeah. There's a dogfish in every pond here at Pond College. She just loves it. What we've actually got in here is we've got a few koi in here. We moved some koi out of here because an otter's around. We see the otter come up the brook. It's called Brook Farm, and we've actually seen that the otter's around, so we've actually removed some of the koi out of here and put them into a holding vat. There is some babies still in here from a spawning from a couple of years ago. So what we're actually doing is we're allowing the blanket weed and the weed to grow, so the otters have less of a chance of catching the fish. And also I don't mind the dog chasing the fish, because it allows the fish to get used to, you know, like not everything that moves is friendly.
Yeah.
Where if you see in the Koi Palace, they come straight to you. Last September, an otter, a female and 3 kits came out and wiped 300 fish out of this pond over a weekend. But like I say, it's a case of yeah, over a weekend. So we allow the weed and everything to grow in this one, just to help the fish really. Then we've got sustainable water feature again. This is a sphere. This is a product that we sell, and it simply is a pump under the ground, and it recirculates. It pumps the water up and then comes back down. And there's a number of different styles. You see that there's a small rippled or sack slate urn, and that's really on a small basin. That's one of the smaller ones that we do. And then we've got like a weeping wall. We've got a naughty dog for a bit of fun. And we've got a natural driftwood piece there. It's just drilled, and then we send the water down the side of it. Then we've got Grace Falls. This is on an 8 foot by 8 foot area. And what you've got here is you've got big boulders or big stones, and these are team lift size stones. So these are 2-person or 3-person size stones. You wouldn't put these in yourself. You could probably roll them into a wheelbarrow, but you know, certainly 2 people needs to be for this sort of size stuff. So you'll see a number of different features on the same footprint with different size stones. But this isn't really for a DIY, this is more of a sort of like a professional installation. What we've got again is we've got an Aqua Basin 45 at the bottom, which is, there's a black tank here, and you can see that this is exposed. We are actually going to be doing something in there, probably still water wildlife, or do something in there, but that's an Aqua Basin 45, and essentially it's recirculating. This one here is a medium stack slate urn, and another Aqua Basin 45 on there. Yeah, and then another ornamental water feature. This is like the spillway bowls, spillway bowl and basin. All of these products are available on the website, and you can get them either as a sort of like a DIY option, or you can have them professionally installed. We've got a network up and down the country of professional installers that will install this stuff or adapt this type of stuff as well. So the next feature here, what we've got is we've got a bio bowl. So this is essentially a patio pond that's been cut out one section, and this is the sort of like the filtration for this particular pond. So it's essentially a case of manipulated and cut down, and it's the start of the stream. So what you've got here is you've got a number of different scalloped urns, again with another dogfish. She knows now that there's no fish in here, so we took the fish out. Well, actually the otter had them, and then we've not put any more fish back in this one, which is why there's a bit more algae and stuff in here, because really the fish, they do eat a number of bits of algae. Sort of like, if you don't feed them as much, then they will eat a certain amount of blanket weed if you've got the right conditions. If you've got the wrong conditions, then blanket weed will grow, but most people now can control blanket weed with a number of different remedies. You know, there's lots of different ways that you can combat blanket weed. I'm not too worried because it is start of the sort of like the ecosystem, and we can just harvest the blanket weed out. So that's a small pond. This is probably the same size pond as most of the ponds that we actually sort of like build and our customers build, and it's about 3 meters by 2.5 meters. This one we've got obviously the urns, where normally you just have a waterfall on the side. Over here is a small micro pond, which is half the size, but essentially you can see the gubbins on this one. So you've got a skimmer on one side underneath the grass, and then you've got the biofalls unit on the other side. So one side is the waterfall filter and the other side is the skimmer. So all of the water's taken off of the surface and then sent to the biological side. So this is half the size of the previous pond. We'll go and have a look at Charlotte's DIY garden and the Zen garden now. So originally when we first came here, we built the lockdown pond, and then we expanded and we moved, and then this was the first feature that we put on the other side of the bank after building the lockdown pond. And this was built by Freddie from Ecoscape Water Gardens down in Essex. And when he was putting it in, he put the sphere. I said to him, whatever you want to do it. You know, we've got a warehouse full of products. And he said, oh, I'd love to install one of the spheres. And when he was putting it in, I was like, oh, you know, I didn't say anything to Freddie at the time. I was like, I would put it in the bank, and he put it in the middle, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. But now I can see his vision, and it looks great from 360 degrees. And if it was in the bank, it would get lost, or, you know, as you can see on other places, there's lots of different ways that you can install these features. You can cut them and manipulate them, or have them right in the middle as part of the feature. And what I like about them is they give you the instant height. If you imagine a waterfall that height, you would need great big stones like the NRG, which we'll see in a second, to frame out the waterfall, to make it look natural. Where you've got these ornamental pieces on the top, you can have that instant height. So if you've got a kitchen window, you can look out and you can look at the waterfall coming over the stacked slate elements. So let's have a look at Charlotte's DIY garden now. So this is essentially, we've got one of everything. We've got a small fountain, which is these are basalt columns, and essentially it's a case of, again, disappearing on a basin. Very simple, very quaint. A lot of these are in Japan, you know, and we were actually inspired by going to some of the restaurants and, you know, and everything else. Then what we've got is we've got a waterfall here, 95 centimeters, essentially a small little basin, and this is sort of like a DIY version. So you could do this in your garden over a weekend with one of the kits. And then you've got Cecil the crane, which is essentially just spitting water, and then you've got the drunken duck as well, just for a bit of fun. You can also see some reminiscence of the fairy garden. You know, the kids love playing in this garden, and you can see all the sort of like the little bits. And then we come on to the smallest pond kit. Essentially what this is, it's 1 metre by about 2 metres, or 6 foot by 4 foot. And then it's got a 2 foot stream, or 60 centimetre stream. And then you've got a skimmer on this side, and we've got, you see there's a frog there, look. The dog's going mad for that. So you've got a skimmer on one side. Essentially this is where the pump is, and then this particular kit comes with a black lid. I don't like it, it doesn't look right, it doesn't fit in, so we basically add another faux lid onto it, and then it blends all into the landscape. And now we move on to the floating Zen garden. Essentially you've got in here, this was designed really for no noise, so it more emulates the Zen. You can get up on the deck, you can meditate, you can work, and then we've got a pool and a wet wall as well. The wet wall is still under construction, or we're still playing around with it, should I say. This one's been in about two years now, and essentially there's a series of pipes that run down and spread water around, and you know, we're playing around with the different plants in there. So you can see I've got some Serencinas in there, the insect plants that I've literally put in there like in the last month or so. And you've also got the ultrasonic mist maker, just for that sort of like extra little bit of sort of like mystery. Last year for Halloween we actually dyed this pond absolute fluorescent green, sort of like a biohazard, and that's when I put the ultrasonic mist makers on there, and it looked really good with all the pumpkins gurgling and spitting out you know, like the bio waste. But essentially I built this for myself to get away from everything and work in a Zen environment. You know, you can get up on the deck. Can you imagine having, you know, essentially a case of a laptop or what have you, and you can work in here out the way of everybody, and you know, it's sort of like meditate. And also we've got the rake gravel. I used to think that rake gravel was sort of like a lot of work, and now since I've been owning this one, you can see it's not highly polished. You know, obviously we've got people coming in all the time, but what you need to do in this garden is not think about the past, not think about the future, but think about now. So you can do your exercises, you can do the raking of the gravel. And we made a rake. You can see it's very easy, and literally it's a case of you can make whatever shapes, whatever you want to do. And what it does is it sort of like emulates the mountains and the water around the mountains, and it's just beautiful. It's just great to play around and let the kids sort of like play in here and make different shapes. There's no sort of like rules into what you should actually do. You know, just have fun with it, really. We'll have a look at the NRG now. which is completely the opposite to the floating Zen garden. So what we've got here is we've got the NRG waterfall, and essentially it's called the NRG, and you say it quickly and it's energy. So I'll switch this on. And as it's sort of like building up, what we've got here is we've got some real big stones. A ton and a half is the biggest one, and it stands 6 foot, and it's actually 18 inches down in the ground. And as you can see with that, it looks a lot more natural than the stacked slate or the scalloped stuff. With the big scalloped urn in the middle, it was sort of almost like I designed this one so you can see it from the gate. You wouldn't really want this in a very small garden, simply because it's too much noise, you know, it's too much energy, if you like. And the bowls start overflowing with joy in a second. And then also what we've got is we've got a damp cave. Just again, it adds a bit of mystery. And also another thing when I was building this one is I wanted to encourage people on nature walks. So I put in sort of like natural, where Luna is now, these are sort of like big stones that you can walk on. And it's literally a case of you just walk straight across. And then you can go up into the mountain and have some fun with it, really. So it's interactive water features, and it encourages the kids, it encourages people. We can actually go up there if you want and have a look, and then look back at the garden. Go back up this way. You see, we're doing some work. The ground's all drying out because we've had, obviously, at the end of the summer. And you see a different aspect of the gardens now as well. So if you think about this, you know, 2 years ago or 3 years ago, this was just a farmer's field.
What is the acreage?
So the gardens is about ½ an acre, and then we've got multiple, we've probably got another ½ an acre for yard space and working areas. So essentially what you've got underneath here is you've got like 10 aqua blocks. So if you think about the sustainable rainwater harvesting, that's got 25. This has actually got 10, and you want 2.5 times the water in motion. So everything that I've just switched on to be encapsulated in a reservoir underneath, and that allows for evaporation. And obviously this time of the year, we're at the lowest point of everything from an evaporation point of view. So sometimes you do have to top up, but essentially you won't be, even in the height of the summer, you don't want to be topping up sort of like every 6 weeks, something like that. So as long as you have 2.5 times or 3 times the water in motion, then you're perfectly fine. I'll quickly take you round to a Stillwater wildlife pond, and you'll see the farm. But before that, we see the small stone garden, miniature water lilies. So this garden was essentially built by Luke, one of my guys, and essentially it was a case of, I was like, right, okay, what I'm going to do is, the brief is that you can't have anything more than 25 kilos. So this emulates a sort of like a glacial melt. After going to Wales, you see all the sort of like the little tiny little streams and stuff going into the bigger streams, and essentially a case of, this is how it's sort of like inspired. A completely different feeling to the Zen, completely different feeling from the NRG. So relaxing, and I love the way that it pulls you into the garden. It's not facing you when you come into the garden, it's actually pulling you into the garden, and you can actually sort of like sit and enjoy. You know, you can grab a book, you can grab a glass of wine, you can literally come and have a great conversation. And it's also a great place in the gardens because there's hardly any wind. You know, you might be getting a bit of wind noise on the camera, but at the same time, and now it's less wind noise. But we'll go round and have a look at a Stillwater wildlife pond, or a farm pond, and you'll see what it looked like 3 years ago. So essentially 3 years ago it looked like just a farmer's field. We planted all these, or we actually shoved the willow branches into the ground. All of these were just stems that we just put into the ground, and the amount of water underneath. So because we're on clay, it's naturally wet. And as you can see, that this pond here now is at the lowest point. So what we did is we basically dug it out last year because I wanted some water, and there was a lot of groundwater. So we went through 4 Roman drains. You see there's a dragonfly on this one. There's a, I think that's common darter. But essentially a case of this sits, so there's no liner in this, it's just literally a clay hole, and you've got the Roman drain. So this is actually where the natural water line is, and you can see it does fill up. So you've got the winter level, it's about 18 inches, 2 foot down at the moment because of the summer level. We can top it up at any time. We just switch a pump on underneath the koi palace, and essentially a case of that pumps water underneath the koi palace. So in the koi palace you've got a liner. We went through 4 drains, and essentially what I'm saying with a Roman drain is it's essentially a stone placed, and it allows the water to trickle through the clay. They actually had a Roman villa on this flat area here underneath the pylons. There was a Roman villa when they were building the A5. So essentially that's why we got the Roman drains. The bigger the hole that you make, you went through more Roman drains. So essentially in a few months this will be full right back up to the top. The reason why we expanded it was really because I wanted more of a stillwater wildlife pond. No filtration, no sort of like ornamental plants. We've got some native stuff in there, so you can see some aquatic plants in there, but literally we just dug a hole, and it's like a test hole, because we are going to be doing some more, you know, but we won't put fish in it, or we might put some native fish in, you know, like stickleback or something like that, just to add a little bit of interest and to stop the mosquitoes. But the dragonflies do a real good job of that. Let's go back and have a look at the Forsley Falls. So essentially Forsley Falls was built during Aquatic Art Live in 2022, and we had John G from Modern Design Aquascaping coming over from Tennessee. Switch the NRG off for this morning. Actually, while we're here, this is actually my favourite sound in the gardens. So when we turn it off, you get all the white noise from the white noise. So it's like, and then you get the bass tones. So you get the treble from the white noise, and you listen to that now. It sounds like running a bath, and it really does put you in that sort of like state. And I just want to create that on its own out the front. Maybe we'll do that for Aquatic Art Live this coming year, 2025. How that's created is essentially there's an echo chamber underneath, so that bass, that deep tone is where water's coming down and hitting water, and we've got that echo chamber that basically punches out the noise straight towards you, so you can angle the noise towards the house or towards a seating area, and you know, it's essentially water's going back into the basin. You enjoying yourself? And what we've got here is we've got Forsley Falls, 35 foot long. On the Tuesday during Aquatic Art Live it was going to be 8 foot long, and on the Wednesday it turned into a 35 foot long stream, so or 10 meters. So this particular stream is 10 meters long. The elevation change is about 3 foot probably, and as you can see it looks really natural and emulates a beautiful stream that's interactive. There's stepping stones on here, there's sort of like destination stuff, and again, going back to the sort of like the adventure walk, you know, if you've got young children, you can turn this off and have it completely bone dry, or you can take them on an adventure walk and get them out of their comfort zone. And you know, a lot of kids play around in that top pool. We're going to have a look at that now. Going back to the sound of the water features, essentially a lot of people say to me, Mark, I can't have a water feature in my garden because I'm worried about the neighbours. We're very much a case of we sit on top of each other, where this one here, you can see there's a lot of water flowing down here, and we've got an echo chamber that's pointing this way. But if you actually come to the side of it, you can hear the difference in the sound, and it's actually the koi palace thing here. If you stand sort of like here, then you'll get that. So essentially you can't hear that. So you could have a neighbour 6 foot away from a great big stream or waterfall like that you can't hear. So interactive points, you know, you've got 35,000 litres of water going down here at the moment, and essentially a case of you don't need them on all the time because they're disappearing water features or disappearing standalone streams, if you like. All of the water is in the basin. You switch it on, it comes down, creates the noise, and you can turn it off as and when you want. You can have it on a sensor, so if you walk around the corner it comes on, or you can have it on a timer and literally have it on, you know, if you've got a second home or something, you could have this come on a Friday afternoon and then it's ready for Friday evening for when you come home. But it's absolutely amazing on how much wildlife, the birds, even people interacting with this. You know, you can just get in, take your shoes off and get in. The dogs, you know, we've had a number of different dogs here and they just love this particular feature. Should we go and see some koi?
Yes, please.
Let's go and have a look at some koi. So what we've got here is we've got my koi palace. So essentially a couple of years ago I was talking to a friend and they said, if you go to Japan and you buy a fish, where are you going to put it? And I said, I'm going to build it a palace. So welcome to my palace. So what we've got here is we've got 100,000 litres of water. The pond's 3 foot deep and we've got loads of koi in there. As you can see, I'm a fanatic with shizuis. Loads of shizuis in there. The biggest one is about 80 centimetres and the smallest one I would say is around about now probably 25-30 cm. And yeah, it's just amazing all the different shizuis that you can get. And then you've also got the dog that's stalking koi somewhere. You've got fish in the wetland. So what you've got here is you've got the filtration system of the pond, and you can see that the fish can get into the filtration system. What I love about these types of systems is it's complete natural behaviour. You know, the fish essentially can behave naturally and they can get in there and sort of like grub around for the shrimps and all sorts of different things. They don't destroy the plants. A lot of people say that you can't keep koi and plants together, where you can see here that there's plants. Yes, they will destroy the plants if you don't feed them enough. So when I'm not feeding the koi enough, then they'll start eating the plants because essentially they're hungry. When you've got a traditional koi pool and you've got lilies in, sometimes the lilies will be fine if you're feeding the fish even without a substrate, and the fish feces feeds the lilies, and the lilies will grow in gravel or, you know, an inert substrate because they're actually eating the fish waste. But ideally you want to have water lilies in sort of like the right substrate, They like very fine substrate, so they do a lot better. If you want lots of flowers, then you need to feed your water lilies and make sure that everything's going well. But essentially, if you put in a new plant into a koi pool, the koi will just go, what is this? And they'll wreck the plant and they'll destroy the plant, because essentially it's like putting a toy into a box. They're just going to hammer that toy and they're going to play around with it and they're going to destroy it. Where if we put a lily into here, they won't destroy it because they don't realize that it's in here, because there's so much for them to do. And as you can see, you know, they're so relaxed. You know, these fish, it's sort of almost like, yes, we do promote, you know, people getting in and not scaring the fish. We do promote that the dog doesn't scare the fish, watches the fish, but at the same time, as it's a case of, you can see the fish just love it. Different ways of, you know, so there's a flow, lots of places for them to hide, and just like every animal on the planet, they've all got their own personality. So essentially all of these fish, they've all got their own personality. Some of the fish won't come anywhere near us, and then other ones will come right and feed and pull on Luna's ears, or, you know, feed right, you know, from around my face when I'm in the pond. And essentially it's a case of, you know, some are more skittish than others as well. So Fizz is a very erratic fish, but I've had her a long time. Often I've thought about removing her away from, because she scares and disrupts the others. So some of the other fish, you know, they're sort of like, they're creatures of habit. And if you've got one that's sort of like skittish or flighty, then it will spook the others. And it's really interesting, you know, like the more you interact with the fish, the better. And you'll learn, you know, human to fish connection. It sounds weird to a lot of people, but you know, you can have a connection with fish. So essentially on this particular pond, you've got filtration system. There's no UV, there's no chemical filtration in here at all. You've essentially got an intake bay on the side here, so all of the water, where Luna's going in, or she will probably go in, because the fish can swim into the intake bay or skimmer or a skim cove, and essentially behind that wall you've got 4 pumps, and then those 4 pumps deliver the water into different areas. So one pump is designed to feed the upflow wetland, so you've got the mechanical filter on one side, then you've got the biological filtration system on the other side. And essentially then the other pumps, return jets, ornamental features. But yeah, you can see the clarity speaks for itself. The fish's sort of like behaviour speaks for itself. Very, very natural behaviour. You know, a lot of people say to me, you know, you can't have rocks and gravel in a pond, and it's like, no, you can. It's really a case of, it's the design. If you've had rocks and gravel in your pond and you've had problems with it, it's normally to do with the design of the pond, not the rocks and the gravel. If you think of the mud ponds in Japan, or if you think about every sort of like natural ecosystem, they've all got mud, they've all got organic waste, they've all got, you know, essentially a forest is an ecosystem. And essentially gravel isn't the problem. Yes, it collects waste, but the fish, you know, if we want to sort of like clean that gravel, yeah, I could get in there and I could stir it all up, I could feed the fish some sinking food, and they'll kick up a load of the waste and it will go through the mechanical filter into the biological stage. But what you've also got is you've got more beneficial bacteria and biofilm on the gravel, actually consuming the sort of like the chemical waste out of the water. And because the whole pond has got surface area everywhere, rather than one surface area, you've got multiple surface areas. In the actual pond itself, we haven't got a lot of gravel. In areas in this particular pond, we have got about 9 inches of gravel, but that's more of a sort of like a planting pocket. Once it goes below 9 inches, then it's anaerobic. Anaerobic conditions are bad, but if you've got a small amount of anaerobic conditions, you're going to have a small amount of anaerobic conditions in a pond like this, but it's good for the system as long as you've got no sort of like dead areas, and it's sort of like collecting waste and then it's releasing waste. You know, when you get in, when the fish get in there, and release all of that and deoxygenate, then that's when you get the problems. But with rocks and gravel, it's not a problem. It's the design of the pond that's the problem a lot of the time.
That is so clear, absolutely beautiful.
And it's great to go in there as well, it's nice. It's not, this particular pond isn't designed for human immersion, but it's an interactive, it's a sort of like a recreational pond. Yes, you can get in there with your fish if you want to get in there with your fish, but it's not designed for human immersion. These particular ponds, they can be designed for anything that you want to keep, or you can design them for human immersion with fish or without fish. You have external pumps. When I say that this isn't designed for human immersion, it's because you have still got submersible pumps on this particular pond. If we were to remove them out of the pond, then you've not got sort of like cables, electric cables going into the pond. I don't particularly mind, but at the same time, there have been cases where people have died from having submerged pumps inside the pond. But essentially, if you want to design it for human immersion, then you have the pumps on the outside, then there's no electric, or you have low wattage pumps.
Excellent, excellent.
It's just so relaxing. The
Certainly
fish's
is.
behaviour. What I don't like is I don't like them when they're too erratic, or when they're asking you for too much attention. It's like me, and it's like, just chill out. Yeah, once you've fed them a bit, they can just relax. And it's all about enjoyment. You can see that the fish, they don't mind Luna. Luna's enjoying it. I get in there, like I say, and play around with the fish. They've all got names.
Yeah.
I haven't seen any new fish this year, but the small fish were from last year, and some of them, the big fish, they're all sort of like 5 years old. When I bought them, they were 4 years old from Japan, and we shipped them in using Tim from Quality Nishigoi. So a lot of these fish are actually from Japan. But it's amazing when you think about a size of pond this big, is it's sort of like there's different areas within the pond. So if you think about a garden in the summertime, if you're too hot, you get into the shade. If you're too cold, you come out of the shade into the sun. In this pond, you've got cool spots and you've got warm spots. You've got a big area over there that naturally heats up, and the stones actually get warmer, and then at the bottom of the wall it's in a shadow area, and then you put your feet, you go down there or you walk, and it's amazing on how the different temperatures. So it's sort of almost like the fish get up on the shallows, and then if they want to cool down, then they can get into the shady spots. It's really weird. And also, if you put a mask on, you can hear the fish crunching on the pellets, or you can hear those different sounds. It's really weird when you get sort of like, it's not a swimming pool, it's not a sterile environment. It's sort of like it's amazing when you start looking for newts or looking for the snails. Obviously, if you think about this, it's sort of like replicating a barrier reef. The koi are the sharks, and then you've got the sort of like the natural barrier reef. I could stop the fish from getting into the wetland, then we would get a lot more dragonflies, we would get a lot more tadpoles, we would get a lot more sort of like wildlife, because then it's sort of like the barrier reef where the sharks can swim into the barrier reef here. The biggest one that I know of at the moment is it's about 5 acres in Australia, and it's 20 foot deep, and they have thousands and thousands of people swimming in it, on a daily basis during a music festival. So it's amazing. If you think about, yes, the sanitization of swimming pools, yes, you've got to be very careful, but at the same time, there's a lot more studies being done on this sort of like filtration system for human immersion. And there's different plants that will take out E. coli, and different plants that are using up sort of like heavy metals and pathogens. And yes, there needs to be a lot more work done on it, but Mother Nature is amazing. It really is.
Fabulous stuff, Mark. Thank you very much.